I realize I have to update my bio. I just rolled off of the ISU board, but I am so excited to be here this evening. As Roxanne said, I'm Sarah Coles. I have known Ryan for over a decade now, I guess, working with children in nature, and so really excited to be here today. So Texas Children in Nature Network, we are turning 15 this year, and our mission is to ensure equitable access and connection to nature for all children in Texas. Texas Children in Nature Network was founded out of Senate Bill 205 back in 2009, where a group of legislators got together and told several different state agencies that someone needs to do something about getting kids outside. It was very specific. And so Texas Parks and Wildlife, Department of State Health Services, Texas Education Association, AgriLife, Texas Forestry Service, all got together, and Nancy Herron was at Texas Parks and Wildlife at that time, and she founded the Texas Children in Nature Network, really out of the work by Richard Louv and the book Last Child in the Woods. And so in 2010, about 75 people got together for that very first meeting of Texas Children in Nature Network and wrote our very first strategic plan. And at that time, for the next 10 years, we were part of Texas Parks and Wildlife as an incubation program under the agency. And then on January 1st, 2021, we officially became independent and have been fully functioning as a nonprofit since that time. Forgive me, my clicker decided to not work as soon as I got here. So just some challenges that we face here in Texas when we're thinking about getting kids outside. One, I don't know if you're aware, but Texas is big. We are roughly, well, we're bigger than the country of France in terms of land mass size. And we have about the same population as Canada. And so we have a lot of people, we have a lot of space. And then that population is predicted to increase to over 50 million in the next 20 years. And most of that is going to be right where you are. So we are looking at what's referred to as the Texas Triangle. So from San Antonio to Austin to Houston, that general area is where most of that population is going to be moving into. And so a lot of people coming in the next 20 years. On top of that, already we have, you heard me say in the video, about 10% of all of the US school-age population lives here in Texas. And so while some states are losing kids, we are not. We're getting more. So we have lots of kids, lots of people. And then we see that there are areas that don't have parks in their communities as well. And then on top of all of that, I don't know if you know this, but it's hot here in Texas, and it's just getting hotter. So we at Texas Children in Nature Network are facing all of these challenges, and we're working through kind of two frameworks when we're thinking about this. So the first is we work off of what's called a collective impact model. Any of you who are in business probably heard this as a buzzword about 10, 15 years ago. Lots of people said they were collective impact. We decided to really take it to heart. And so what it means for us is that we have, at this point, over 900 organizations that we work with all across the state. From corner to corner. I was just in El Paso 2 weeks ago. I've been at meetings up in the Panhandle, out in Beaumont, down, literally a week ago I was in McAllen, so we are covering the whole state. And so all of our partners are working together towards this common agenda of getting children and families outside. And then we do this through lots of mutually reinforcing activities, which means we like to work together. And then we talk to each other a lot. So we are a group that believes in a meeting. Lots of meetings. And we also do lots of social media, newsletters, and so on to communicate with each other. Again, because we are all over the state. And then all of that needs a rudder. kind of steering the ship in one direction towards getting children and families outside, so that is where Texas Children in Nature comes in. We also work off of what's called a systems change framework, which is we know that this problem is more than just one program at a time. We're really thinking about what's the big picture. And for us, that big picture is that children need to spend time outside. And so we're looking at all of the things that affect that. So what are the policies or rules in place that affect how kids can spend time outside? So that's things like recess. So how many of you knew that there is not a recess policy in Texas? Some of you did? Yes. Recess is not mandatory in the state of Texas. And so those are things that affect how kids are able to spend time outside, because that affects during the school day if they're able to spend time outdoors. And then we also think about things like zoning rules. We think about land distribution. All of those things are things that are policies that affect that. We also think of practices, which are, well, that's how we've always done it. How many of you have heard that sentence before? So we think about that. And we think about the resources. So what is the money? What is the time? What is the information that has an impact on how we get kids outside? And we think about who are the people in the room when we're having this conversation. So who are the people that we're talking to? Who are the people that are really out there in the field, quite literally in this case, with the kids? And we think about who has the power to make these decisions. Sometimes that's a mayor. Sometimes that's a really persnickety mom on a PTA. And so all of these people are people that we want to talk to. And so these are all things that we think about for systems change. So why do we do this? So we do all of this work, but why? And we do this because we know, and the research shows, that children who play and learn outside are healthier physically and mentally, perform better in school, are socially connected with each other, and are conservation leaders of tomorrow. So I've got a few things I'm going to go through here. If any of you at any point are like, I would like to see that study, just let me know. I'm more than happy to share my slides. Everything's linked. And so what we're seeing, this is just a smattering. We've got tons more out there, and more of this research is coming out every day. And so one of the big things we're seeing currently is that more and more kids are getting diagnosed with ADHD. But we're seeing that for kids who regularly spend time outside, they're better able to self-regulate and be able to deal with their ADHD more readily, and so we're seeing less need for medication and so on with ADHD. We're also seeing social emotional learning, so learning how to control the big feelings that a lot of our kids have. All of us have big feelings, so we've all learned how to work with them. And so nature helps kids do that. So we're seeing things, interventions happening with younger kids outdoors. We've seen some really interesting research come out about that. And then we're seeing a growing mental health crisis with our students here, not just in Texas, all across the US. According to some 2021 CDC data, and the latest data should be coming out any day now from the last survey that they did, 1 in 5 high school students in the US were dealing with at least 2 weeks congruently of depression or anxiety, which is the clinical diagnosis line, and then 1 in 10 were dealing with suicidal ideation. So that's the highest we've ever seen with our youth in America. And so really looking at how can interventions in nature affect those numbers. We are seeing that kids who regularly spend time outside are more connected to each other. There's something that happens where you are able to connect with each other on a deeper level outdoors. For any of you who grew up going camping and stuff, maybe you think about childhood camping trips, and it's probably where you felt the closest to your family. So we see connectedness growing, and this is really interesting. The highest is with middle schoolers when they're next to blue space. And blue space means water. So thinking about y'all have some amazing water available for y'all out here. So really thinking about that blue space for kids. And any of you who have ever lived with a middle schooler understand the importance of connectedness. And then we also see that students who are learning outside learn how to cooperate with each other a lot more. So they are able to learn together, to figure out problems together, and that's something that just comes naturally through this outdoor time. And overall, the American Pediatric Society just completed this systematic review, which means they looked at every article that has come out about kids, outdoors, and nature. And it was thousands of articles that they looked at. And did a review of all of them, and have found that overall the data shows that it's really important for kids to spend time outside. So one of the things that they are deciding is adding outdoor time to those well-child visits. So in those conversations that you're having with your child's doctor about things that are going on with your kids, talking about the importance of spending time outside as one of those factors to think about, as important as sleep, diet, etc. So thinking about school, we're seeing, and many of you probably think about this, if you have a big problem that you're trying to figure out, how many of you are like, I think I should just go outside for a few minutes, and then I'll come back. Think about that problem, I'll come back, take a walk, go do that thing. You know, amazingly, the same thing is true for our children. And so kids who get that break during the day, come back refreshed, are able to better pay attention in class. We also are seeing that there is increased learning outcomes. So for us in Texas, that means greater STAR test scores for kids that are regularly learning outside. I didn't put this one on there because this one's a systematic review, so it's bigger, but we do have this really interesting study out of Sky Ranch up by Dallas, where they took a group of 5th graders and did the week before the STAR test, took half of the kids and did their standard review for the STAR test the week before, so in their classrooms reviewing the way that they've done for years. And then they took half of the kids and sent them out to Sky Ranch. And they spent the whole week reviewing for the STAR test at Sky Ranch, but they were doing it through outdoor activities. And the kids who went to Sky Ranch scored higher on the STAR test than the kids who had done the traditional review. Yeah. So it's a pretty big deal for STAR test scores, because schools know that that is the ultimate decision maker for a lot of the things that they do, is those STAR test scores. We just had a presentation at one of our webinars from a professor who's working in Florida, and she's been looking again at this attention with kindergartners, which shiny things will distract a kindergartner. And this school had an outdoor classroom and an indoor classroom, and was right across the street from a fire station. And kindergartners not only are easily distracted, but they love a fire truck. And so she found that even when they were teaching outdoors, the fire truck could go by and the kids didn't miss a beat. They were locked in on those lessons, versus when they were inside the classroom, would easily be distracted by the trucks going outside out the windows. And so really much more clued in and paying attention outdoors. And then we know that our kids who spend time outside are conservation leaders of tomorrow. We protect what we love. And getting kids to love the outdoors when they're younger means that they're going to love the outdoors when they're older. And so we're seeing lots of increased association of pro-conservation ethic when spending time outside. One of these studies is from Finland, and they found that before the age of 11, if someone has a meaningful nature experience, they're going to grow up to really want to care for the outdoors when they get older. And so it's really important for that. We also have an economic benefit of this as well. So Texan by Nature just completed a big economic impact report on conservation. That is there if any of you are interested in that. And then also, the Children in Nature Network International did a study on green schoolyards and found that they have a 3-to-1 return on investment, which means for every dollar spent, $3 more comes into the community, which is really high for one of those studies. I see some phones out, so I'm going to take a minute. So some of our, this is all really great. This is why we do it. But what do we do? I get that question a lot. So what do you do? So the first thing we work with is an initiative called Nature Everywhere. So this is an initiative out of Children in Nature Network, the National League of Cities, and Kaboom. And if any of you ever watched Kaboom, watched Parks and Rec, Kaboom is actually a real thing. And so these are 3 organizations that got together, and what they look at is cities and how every department within a city or a community, doesn't need to be a big city, we have small cities that are part of Nature Everywhere. How can all of those city departments work together to get more kids outside? So often, when I contact a city, I'm told, oh, you should talk to Parks and Rec, which is great. I love working with Parks and Rec departments. But we're also thinking about city departments like transportation, solid waste, animal control. All of those cities, if you think about it, that all has an impact on how kids spend time outside. Transportation, how are kids getting to parks? Both the roads, the sidewalks. Can you ride your bike to a park? Can you walk to a park? Do you need to take a bus to the park? Is there parking at the park? All of those things come into play. For animal control, are there wild animals running around the park that would make a family feel uncomfortable going to that park? Solid waste. Is there trash all over the park? All of these things come into play on how kids get to spend time outside. So right now we're working with 9 cities in Texas as part of this Nature Everywhere, and they're always taking applications because their goal is to have 100 cities participating nationwide by the end of this year, and they're at about 75 right now. So if any of your cities are interested, I can get you involved. We also work with our littlest Texans, so 0 to 5, in our brand new, brand new, this initiative, we've been working behind the scenes for a while, but it's launched to the public just 3 weeks ago. This is our early childhood outdoor learning environments. So this is where we're working in early child care centers to put outdoor play spaces at those centers. Here you see an example of one. This is at the San Antonio Zoo. They have an early childhood center that serves as our pilot location. But we have centers all over that are doing this. And so the initiative is really to think about how we can get kids outside. And the reason we do this is, again, we know that kids who play and learn outside are healthier and perform better at school. And for our littlest Texans, it sets them up to be really well prepared for school when they get older. So, yes?
What is DSHS?
Oh, great question. I forgot that I put that in there. DSHS is Department of State Health Services. And so it's the State Health Department. And so they do all sorts of things there. And one of the things is help us with this work. We are funded through a grant through them for this work that we're doing. And for Department of State Health Services, it's really because they're seeing obesity levels rise within the state of Texas. Right now, about 20% of kids 5 and under are considered obese. And so one of the things that this work does, they've shown, is it just helps it naturally help kids be more active without being prescriptive about it. They're just naturally more active because we have our 12 best practices. So this is how we design these outdoor spaces so that it encourages kids and adults, really, because all of these are also really key to park design, encourages people to be more active. So for schools, we're thinking about 10 or more play and learning settings, so different places around the outdoor space. And they can be big and they can be small. And part of that is because kids have what's called a play cycle. And so there's really rambunctious active play as part of what probably you stereotypically think of on a playground. But there's also quiet play, imaginative play, and then really something called deep play. So when they go through that play cycle, they get what's called into deep play. And deep play happens after about 30, 45 minutes of play. And it's when, those of you that have had kids, when you call their name and they just are oblivious to you, it's because they're in deep play. They're in their own world. It's not that they're not listening, it's that they are completely absorbed in play. That's often when you'll also see the tongue hanging out of the mouth, things like that, because they are so engaged in what they're doing. And so we need these multiple play settings to engage that play cycle. A looping, curving pathway. So a looping pathway is just more fun than a straight line for a variety of reasons. It helps you kind of look, well, what's around that corner? What's over there? You're curious. But also, for kids, a loop is really fun for young kids because they like to run around it, ride a bike around it. All of those things are really fun. I don't know how many times I have clocked kids be like, I can go faster today. And then a lawn that you can do lots of things on. Shade, we like shade from trees, but we also like shade from other reasons because some parts of the state have lots of shade trees. Some parts of the state don't have lots of shade trees. I would not expect my El Paso centers to have the same amount of trees as my Houston centers. They just don't have the same environment. Loose parts, so lots of loose things to play with. A vegetable garden, wheeled toys. For our younger kids, those are things like wagons, tricycles. But if you think about it, adults also have wheeled toys. They're just bigger. We have bikes, cars, one wheels. Those are all wheeled toys. They're just adult-sized ones. And we have support gross motor activities, so things that really help musculoskeletal development. One of the things that we're starting to see, because our kids aren't spending as much time outside, is our joints evolved to be climbing trees, running over rough ground, hiking, those things like that. And the kids' joints just aren't developing the same way. We're also seeing things like our vestibular system, which is our balance. We need things that uneven ground and so on to really develop that balance system. We're starting to see middle schoolers just kind of like fall out of their chairs because they don't have that sense of balance developed. Also things like depth perception and being able to throw a ball back and forth, things like that. All of these things outdoor play is really key for. Sufficient trees, again, I said it's not we don't want trees, we want trees. And for us, sufficient is a variable number, but we're looking for around 30% tree canopy coverage. That's kind of the goal, is to have 30% tree canopy coverage. If we can get more than that, that would be fantastic, but our goal is about 30%. Edible fruit trees, shrubs, vines, ornamental grasses. This is for play value. For younger kids, you can hide in them, feel them, smell them, all kinds of things for that. And we do have some child-friendly plant lists that we have for that. Things that are non-toxic, but also have great play value to them as well. And then this bottom one seems like it's out of place, but anyone who's taught will tell you this is the most important one, which is storage. If you have the stuff outside for teachers, they will go outside and they will use it. If they have to cart everything back and forth from their classrooms, they will not go outside and they will not use it. That is a human trait. I am the same way. So we also work on nature smart libraries. So this is the idea where we are working with libraries to do a few things. One is to put story walks. This is an example of one here, where you take this is a children's book, it could be any book, a book in signs, and you can kind of see it goes down this looping, curving pathway, where you're going to read a page on every sign. And also we're adding little activities for each thing for engagement as well. Doing nature programming at the libraries, updating their green space. So thinking about, are there places where folks can sit outside and read, places where you can explore the outdoors around that library. And this last one, LEAP, which I know I haven't explained because, LEAP stands for our Library Explorer Adventure Packs. So these are backpacks. You see an example here. This is version 1. We're on version 3 or 4 at this point. We're no longer in a clear backpack. We learned very fast that a clear backpack does not stand up to mesquite so we're not using that backpack anymore, but it's real pretty in the picture. These are backpacks that are at libraries. We've got 195 backpacks out right now. The last few are going out as we speak. We should be up to 200 or so by the end of the month. And so these backpacks are at libraries, and we piloted it in the Rio Grande Valley. We also have them in communities surrounding Houston, communities surrounding Dallas, and your very own Holdsworth Butt Library in Kerrville is getting them this May. And so these are backpacks that are filled with different themes of outdoor stuff. So we have a birding backpack, and a rocks backpack, and a herpetology backpack, all different themes. And you can check them out. They have field guides. What you see here is our plants backpack. In that white box is a plant press. So all different kinds of really cool stuff in there. You can check them out for depends on the library, 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what each library does, for their regular checkout time. And you can explore with them. Now, one really cool thing is, of our pilot sites so far, the state parks within their region that those backpacks are in are also allowing free state park passes as part of this backpack. So you can visit the state parks. You can also just go to the creek bed down the street from you and explore, and do all different kinds of exploration with these backpacks. We also are working in green schoolyards. So here you see an example from Sanchez Elementary in Austin. So think back to our 12 best practices. We're just taking that and growing it a little bit, and we're working with elementary, middle, and high schoolers, and increasing the green space available on their campuses. So when you think about most campuses in Texas, most school campuses are primarily St. Augustine grass, a tree or two. If it's an elementary school, there's probably a playground and a basketball court that's covered with a metal structure. Does that sound pretty standard? So what we're doing is we're taking out a lot of that St. Augustine grass, we're putting in trees, and we're putting in nature play. So here you can see an example of some of that nature play. We're also putting in outdoor classrooms, we're putting in habitat gardens, we're putting in rain gardens, we're putting in pollinator habitat, putting all kinds of stuff in there. And we're doing this for a few reasons. One, the schools that we are primarily focusing on for this are schools that don't have a local park within the neighborhood. And so our goal is for those schools to serve as a park for that neighborhood. We have an overall goal, along with the Trust for Public Lands, to get people to be living within about a half a mile of our park. Now, why a half a mile? That seems like a short distance. Think about when you have toddlers. And a half a mile is about a 10, 15-minute walk. And let's say you want to go to the park every day. Are you going further than a 10-minute walk with a toddler every day? So that's why we came up with the half mile. Very practical reasons. Little legs don't go very far. And so we are looking at green schoolyards to increase those park spaces. Again, because a lot of communities, we just don't have land available for parks. And so thinking about using land that is already owned by the city or by the independent school district for that park space. So we're doing it for that reason. That's one reason. Another reason is St. Augustine grass. It's not the best habitat for pollinators, for critters of all kinds. It's pretty monoculture, doesn't give a whole lot in terms of pollination and so on. And so we're thinking about these green schoolyards as really being a place for habitat. We have a really big project we're working down in the Rio Grande Valley on, where we've got 37 campuses that are getting these outdoor green schoolyards. And so an individual campus might be an acre or two. So that doesn't seem like a huge impact. But when you make 37 of them, now we're talking about a pretty big swath of land that we're making an impact on our habitat. And then we also think of things like heat island. So a heat island is where, because of concrete and buildings, it could be hotter in an area than in another area. And we already talked about the fact that Texas is hot, and we don't want it to be hotter. And so putting in these outdoor spaces, one of our partners that we work with has some really interesting work that he's been doing on outdoor green spaces like this, and there's about a 40-degree temperature difference between this area of the park and the parking lot of the school campus. So that's a major, major difference. And so that means that kids are going to be playing outdoors for longer in the year because it's not as hot in these outdoor spaces. It also means for energy conservation for these schools, they're not having to spend as much money on air conditioning because it is cooler around that school campus. It also means that everyone's just happier because, let's face it, we're all a little cranky when we're hot. That's one reason. Another reason is flood mitigation. So we also know that lots of concrete means flooding. And so by putting in these green schoolyards, we're creating more space for the water to slowly go through the ground and into the aquifer versus runoff. So we currently have about 10 independent school districts that we're working with on green schoolyards. Seguin ISD is one of those school districts that we work with. We love working with Pete out at Seguin ISD. We also have this, what we call the Texas Healthy Parks Plan. So this is a tool that we worked with Texas Parks and Wildlife, Texas Trust for Public Lands, and the State Health Department to develop, which is looking at where communities may be best served to build a park. So a lot of times communities, if they are thinking about a park, you're faced with, but where? And so it's a decision support tool to really help think about where those parks could go. So we are thinking about things like heat island, flood mitigation, air quality, where there is a park, where there's not a park, all of those things. So here's an example of the Healthy Parks Plan for New Braunfels. It's this purple corner up at the top right here. The darker the purple, the more according to the math that the really smart people figured out, shows where there should be a park. And then the really bright purple spots are where there's a school. So you see, it would be really great if my clicker was working. Sorry. Right, let's see if I can get my cursor to show. Right where it's the darkest, there's a nice school right here. So this might be a good spot to think about a park or a green schoolyard. And so you can pull all these things out, you can download community reports. That QR code will take you to the one for New Braunfels for any of you that are interested. And because state agencies did this, guess what? It's free. And so, but this is a whole lot. If you have never worked with GIS before, understandable. So, we offer trainings on how to use this tool. So we have one coming up in May at the Meadows Center. And so I will be talking about the Healthy Parks Plan, and then another tool that we use a lot called Gen Thrive through EcoRise. And so that will help you put where there's a nature space and then where there's nature programming and figure out where there might be a gap for any of you that are thinking about nature programming. And then also Kelly Alvis from the Texas Water Research Institute and AgriLife is going to be talking about kind of the basics of mapping and using mapping for evaluation. I see some phones out still. What? I see some phones out. So we are really excited to be launching the Hill Country Regional Collaborative. So one of the ways that we support all of our partners across the state is through our regional collaboratives. You heard in my introduction, I started as a regional leader for Coastal Bend. Ryan was the regional leader up here in Austin. That's how we ended up meeting each other years ago. And so we are launching the Hill Country Regional Collaborative. The very first meeting of the Hill Country Regional Collaborative will be April 7th at 1 o'clock at the Canyon Lake Gorge. If that QR code will take you to the RSVP form if you're interested in attending. Also, Nancy here in the audience would be able to tell you anything you needed to know about the meeting. So we are excited about launching the Regional Collaborative. We do also offer lots of workshops all the time. We have about 35 throughout the year. So the next one is going to be on March 29th. It's on all about our newly launched Early Childhood Network. And then we'll have one of promoting the foundations of literacy outdoors. And then we've got leveraging your organization's strengths to work alongside communities. But we have lots of stuff. I'm currently putting all of our fall listings up on the website now. So you'll be able to see everything throughout the rest of the year soon. And then you may be wondering, how can I join this amazing organization? Because I want to spend more time with Sarah. And if that is the case, you can join our Hill Country Regional Collaborative. You could become a volunteer, or you can become a member of Texas Children in Nature Network. You could follow us on social media. Or you can get in contact with me. So that's my contact information. And that's the end of my presentation, so I can take questions. Yes?
We're working with Native Plant Society, we have done school gardens. And the problem we run into is maintenance, especially over the summer. And so the idea of using the school as a park is a great one, but maintenance is a huge issue. How are y'all doing it?
Great question, and that is probably our biggest challenge. Is she asked about maintenance for the outdoor green schoolyards. So we do this through a variety of ways. One, we really encourage a joint use agreement between the school district and the city parks department, and then the parks department can kind of take over some of that maintenance during the summer. So that's one way. Another way is getting master naturalists, master gardeners, Native Plant Society involved as well in the project. So volunteer hours is part of it. And then lastly, we work with the school maintenance teams. So in addition to putting in these spaces, we do trainings with administration, we do trainings with teachers, and we do trainings with maintenance staff. Because what we often find is that the maintenance staff has not been trained on what's a plant that they want to keep, what's a plant they don't want to keep. There's often very honest attempts to be helpful, and they're not helpful. And so really doing lots of training, and really talking about how this is an additional classroom, much like you would maintain the classrooms inside the building, we're going to maintain the classroom space outside the building. So we do all of those things in conjunction. I'm not saying it's perfect. There are still definitely challenges. We have all seen the very sad droopy gardens, and that happens. But we're trying new things every day to try and really work on that. And one of those is really encouraging the use of native plants, because we do know that those native plants are going to take a lot less maintenance than even the St. Augustine grass that they have out there. We had one of our partners just finished a big native plant build in Houston at an A-Leaf ISD. It was a 4-acre campus that they converted to prairie, and they did a pre and a post of maintenance. And so they found, some of you are nodding, so you probably heard Jaime talk about this. And so what they did is they figured out before the conversion, it would take a team of 5 mowers 8 hours to mow the whole campus. After the conversion, it would take 2 of them 2 hours to do the bits and bobs that needed to be done. So a massive impact in terms of maintenance need, and that frees them up to do other things, which right now schools are really having a hard time keeping maintenance staff, and so that's really amazing. It also really decreases the amount of emissions that are coming from lawn care. So we know probably about 1/3 of our emissions are coming from lawn care, and so it really has a major impact on air quality around those campuses as well.
Texas Children in Nature Network, and yet you mentioned outdoors, and outdoors isn't necessarily in nature in my mind. So what is the significance of just being outdoors but not in nature?
So yes, so I think of nature and outdoors, I try to use them interchangeably, but we have big nature and we have small nature. So when I think about small nature, I'm often thinking about the pillbug on the sidewalk, clouds, because we know that a lot of kids maybe can't go out to Big Bend. And there's also a fear factor for people who maybe didn't grow up in nature. If you're like, your very first time is I'm dropping you off with a backpack in the middle of Big Bend National Park, and you're like, hey, they have bears there. And so thinking about bridging that gap, when I'm thinking about nature experiences, I'm thinking about where you're having contact with the natural world. So maybe not so much soccer on a soccer field, but more maybe on the edge of that soccer field, there's some trees and some shrubs, and you can interact with nature on that space. And we also think about outside, maybe is because I do think about outside as well. So maybe your picnic with your family at a park. So you're interacting both socially and with nature at the same time. So kind of thinking about that. I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, what I was more concerned about, you said you want kids to go out to recess, but if they're doing recess on a concrete area, is that really going to be of great
Yeah,
value?
that's why part of why we're trying to encourage the green schoolyards as well. So less concrete, more trees. Yeah.
So I'm an elementary school teacher, and that was my kind of question as well with that elementary school playground. Is there still some benefit as opposed to zero?
Yes. So there, some is better than none. As many things in life, some is better than none. Some exercise is better than no exercise. Some time outside and in nature is better than no time outside and in nature. And so there is some benefit. But we do, and we also know that, especially for schools, being able to do a major renovation like that, kind of like what we're doing down in the valley with our 37 schools is an anomaly. Schools rarely get that opportunity, and we are very aware of that. Usually you're looking at like, we got $1,000 this year, y'all. Let's plant 3 trees. And so, we're definitely thinking about a slow progress portion of that, and really thinking about how can we use what's already outside. We recently did a survey with a few of our school districts of like, what do you actually have on your campus? And we found out for a lot of schools, when we went out and actually walked their whole campus, a lot of the teachers hadn't been to every corner of their campus, and there were some opportunities outside and on their campuses that they didn't even know they had. So really taking a chance to just even see what's available on your campus, maybe a little bit further than you're used to going. And so thinking even from the beginning there. Yeah?
When trying to educate kids and reach them, do you find that the earlier is always better, or is there a more effective age range to do that at?
I mean, any age is great. I have seen kids really have an impact at any age. Getting kids out in nature earlier means they're more comfortable when they're older. So there's less of a hurdle. But I've also worked with kids who are spending time in nature for the first time as a 17-year-old, have never had them out and experience, like one of our staff members is like that. She had never spent time out in nature before she was a high school senior, and she had to pick for a work-study program. She got assigned to the Audubon group, and so she had never been outside before, and she's like, sure. And now she works for us. Like, she loves being out in nature. So it can happen at any age. Yeah.
So again, coming from an elementary school teacher perspective, our district is growing substantially with what you were talking about. And in the last, 4 or 5 years, we're adding 4 different elementary schools. So how do you get this district to talk to y'all?
Great question. So there's a few things that are happening in regards to that. One, there is a group of very passionate folks that work for the various education service centers. So this is very education-y. But we have the independent school district, and then the education service centers, and then the TEA. And so there's 20 education service centers across the state. And we have some very passionate people at some of these education service centers who have started getting together to talk about curriculum components and how they are able to work with the teachers at the ISDs and the administrators at the ISDs on those curricular components. So that's one way, is finding an ally in whatever area of the education system we can find and worming our way in. So that's one thing. And we really participated a lot with STAT, so the Science Teachers Association, on this a few years ago, is we had a major TEACS update this year, where For elementary, they have to spend 80% of their time in the field or in the lab. And really then going to schools and be like, you have a TEKS update, let's talk about how you can fulfill it. So that really helped. And then also really thinking about how we are working with teachers that it's not something additional. And I know this from having been in the classroom, you have so much on your plate. Like, there's just, you have like 50 million things to do in 2 hours, and it's just not gonna happen. So, really looking at how can we take what you're already doing inside and transitioning it to outside. So those are things that can happen no matter where you are in the progress. Then we have, for instances like yours, so ISDs that are in a big building phase, really thinking about starting before a shovel hits the ground. And so thinking about every school district has a document that is called the Education Specifications. So this is what it means for a school to be a school within the school district. How many, like that every school needs to have a parking lot, bathrooms, all different things. And so working with school districts on like how can we put outdoor learning in those education specifications? To really think through then when the architects get the bids to design these buildings, outdoor learning's just in there from the beginning. Yeah?
Yeah, from the master naturalist standpoint, we'd like to see those architects be aware of the dark sky benefits.
Yeah.
And, do you see any evidence of that?
We have several firms that we work with pretty regularly through our work with outdoor learning, and some of it is thinking about the outdoor lighting in those outdoor campuses as well. Particularly, we're able to tie this in with like, if we're gonna put a pollinator garden in, we probably should think about the whole day of the pollinators in that like, maybe not have bright lights on them in the middle of the night. Different things like that. So thinking through all of those things is part of that as well.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.